Good afternoon, and welcome to the Commission's report, Integrity Matters, sponsored by Flow here on Radio Turks and Caicos. I'm your host, Imterniza McCartney, the Public Education Officer for the Integrity Commission. And today I have here with me three young gentlemen, Commissioner Stephen Wilson K.C., Director Paul Martin, and Deputy Director Richard Bean. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And just to share a bit about my guests for today, Commissioner Stephen Wilson K.C. Stephen Wilson is a partner in the law firm of Graham Thompson and head of the firm's litigation and dispute resolution practice and the firm's Turks and Caicos Islands office in Providenciales. He has headlined cases involving multinational entities across a range of sectors, notably the tourism and hospitality, banking, real estate, insurance, and construction sectors. Stephen's work has included multi-jurisdictional claims and multi-party actions, and he's noted for his expertise in complex corporate and commercial disputes. He is highly regarded for his knowledge and constitutional and administrative law, and is a leading attorney in the field of asset recovery. Stephen was recently appointed by the Chief Justice as a member of the technical team to produce new civil procedural rules for the judiciary of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Welcome, Commissioner Stephen Wilson K.C.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We have also Director Paul Martin. He is the former senior UK police officer with extensive international experience, specializing in intelligence and anti-corruption. Mr. Martin has had extensive training in policing and comes to the position with a wealth of experience gained over 30 years as an operational police officer in the Metropolitan Police and Norfolk Constabulary in the United Kingdom. He has planned, led, and executed many complex criminal and administrative investigations as a detective and investigator at every rank. He has also had international experience between 2011 and 2014 in Kosovo, formerly part of Yugoslavia, where he was a senior investigating officer and chief advisor for 2 international rule of law missions in the Balkans, monitoring, mentoring, advising the National and Regional Police Service, and managing significant corruption inquiries. He has also worked for the UN and the Council of Europe, lecturing on anti-corruption and investigation across Europe and Asia. Mr. Martin is no stranger to the Turks and Caicos Islands, for he has previously also served as the Senior Investigative Officer and Intelligence Officer between the years 2014 and 2016, where he was tasked with investigating public sector corruption and money laundering by public officials in these islands. Welcome, Paul Martin.
Thank you, and thank you for describing me as young.
And we have also Mr. Richard Bean, an attorney at law at Turks and Caicos Bar. He has served as the Deputy Director of the Turks and Caicos Islands Integrity Commission since January of 2014. Prior to that, Mr. Bean has served in the Ministry of Finance in various capacities over the years as the lead liaison in the Exchange of Information Unit, the Revenue Counsel for the Ministry of Finance, the collection of stamp duty. He's also served for several years as a Crown Prosecutor in the Attorney General's Chambers of the Turks and Caicos Islands, and as the Inward Investment Manager with the Investment Division of the TCIG, TC, formerly TC Invest. Welcome, Mr. Richard Bean, Deputy Director.
Thank you.
And I want to say again, thanks to each of you for taking your time. We know that we have busy schedules, there's so much to do, but thank you very much for taking your time to share with our listeners on the executive level functioning of the Integrity Commission. Before we go into today's program, listeners, we will hear a word from our sponsors, and then we will return.
Introducing Flow Evil.
Ripped jeans, gold rings, all black, everything creeping through the night.
Anywhere you are,
Big girls don't scream hard like Halloween, make me feel alive.
There's a world of entertainment here, and you run the show. Flow Evil.
Welcome back to today's program on the Nation Station 89.1 FM, Radio Turks and Caicos. If you're just joining me, I'm your host, Imterniza McCartney, the Public Education Officer for the Integrity Commission, and I'm here with our Commissioner Stephen Wilson K.C., the Director, Paul Martin, and the Deputy Director, Richard B. Shout out to Flow, our sponsor, for this awesome opportunity to increase our reach capacity to share this vital information with each of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to you, our listeners, be it you are listening here locally, regionally, or internationally. Wherever you are from, welcome to the Commission's report, Integrity Matters. Invite a friend, a family member, anyone who needs to be informed about the role and the function of the Integrity Commission. I also invite you to visit our website at www.integritycommission.tc to learn more about the Integrity Commission. And just for a recap of what we've done so far, we've done the overall role and function of the Integrity Commission. We've highlighted the role of the Integrity Commission, the role of you as citizens, as well as we've spoken with enforcement and compliance and gotten a chance to meet some of our staff members there. So today we're meeting formally Commissioner Stephen Wilson, Director Paul Martin, and Deputy Director Richard B. Our aim is to ensure that we give each of you a better understanding about the Integrity Commission as we lead in combating corruption so that public resources can be used fairly for the benefit of all TCI people. I would like to ask that if you have any questions, you can forward them to ask@integritycommission.tc, or you can call us on 941-7847 in our Provo office, or 946-1941 in our Grand Turk office. So without further ado, we're going to start to talk about the Integrity Commission. The overall goal of the Integrity Commission is to promote integrity, honesty, and good faith in public life. Richie, can you describe the functions of the Integrity Commission in which we are mandated to carry out? Persons are aware we have the Compliance Department, we have investigation, we have public education. We also have a duty to work in collaboration with public bodies as well.
The Integrity Commission was started in 2010. It is a constitutional body that sits under the bodies of good governance under His Excellency's purview. Under the Constitution, public education, the receipt and examination of declarations happen to be two of the most important aspects of the mandate of the Integrity Commission. In order to carry out the functions that we have to do, there is the Integrity Commission Ordinance, which came into place in 2008. Under the ordinance, there are the codes of conduct, and there's also the codes regarding conflicts of interest. We also have under the Integrity Commission Ordinance the Political Activities Ordinance, as well as the Bribery Ordinance. The Bribery Ordinance was enacted a few years ago, however, it's not been commenced, as we still await funding to properly implement and carry out work under that ordinance. But that doesn't stop us, because parts of the Integrity Commission Ordinance relate strictly to bribery under the definitions of acts of corruption. So the Commission has its hands full in that we are also mandated to investigate as our function any allegations of corruption that come into us, and we do get quite a bit. So you have the compliance unit that receives declarations and is supposed to, under the Constitution and our ordinance, excuse me, under the functions of the Commission, to examine those declarations to see if they're actually what is presented. And they've been doing quite an admirable job at doing that. We've got, and the director will expand on this even more, this year we've got a 98% compliance rate. Normally it's about 95%. This year was 98%, which is very good. We have about 400 declarants who submit their documents to the Commission. Public education, as you know, being the director of it yourself, we've reached out and met with well over 1,000 persons throughout the government service and the statutory boards. But there's still a lot more that we have to do and that we intend to do, particularly dealing with the private sector. Investigative-wise, that unit is stacked with professionals who look into, as much as we can, with the resources we have, what comes before us. And the director will also expand on how we go about doing that. But those are the main areas that we look into as the Integrity Commission on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
If I can just come in on that. Yeah, I mean, I'll be quite honest, I'm proud of the fact that our compliance unit has got the highest rate in the Caribbean of 98%. And it's due to the hard work of that department, but also the hard work of public education. Because what they do is they reach out to all the declarants and they explain to them what they have to do. And as a result, we have a high compliance rate. I would also point out that it is actually a criminal offence not to declare your income and assets. And some other areas in the Caribbean, they made the decision this year in Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago that they're going to prosecute people. We haven't gone down that route, but it is very, very important. The great thing about it is the legislation, is it means that, as I've said, people have to declare their income and assets. And that means it's transparent. And that not only protects the people of Turks and Caicos, but it also protects the declarants as well. The other aspect of it is the conflict of interests. Now, some people don't understand the conflict of interest, but again, it does the same thing. So if someone has an interest in a contract, for example, that's related to the government, then they have to deal with that, and we'll advise with how to deal with that, probably put it in a blind trust. But again, it protects the declarant against allegations of corruption, and it protects the government as well. In relation to the investigation side of things, as is pointed out, we receive quite a number of allegations, more than we can probably deal with. So what we actually do there, and I'll discuss this later, is that we prioritise the ones that we think are the biggest threat. There is one other aspect that we haven't covered in terms of whistleblower protection. There is whistleblower protection for anyone who makes an allegation within the government. However, it's fully accepted that in a small country like this, it's very, very difficult to actually enact that. So what we would do is that if people are feeling that yes, they would like to report it, but they're frightened of the consequences, then we'd be more than happy if they report it anonymously. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Richie, and thank you, Paul. Some of the things that were highlighted with regards to the functions of the Integrity Commission, yes, compliance, those persons who have to file, ensuring that it's been said over and over again that it's intrusive. However, it is something that is necessary. The investigation unit having to investigate any acts of corruption or any breaches in the code of conduct, as well as public education, ensuring that the information is shared and understood throughout not just the public but the private sector as well. And leading into that, yes, this mandate has to be carried out through these functions. Explain the skill set, the resources which makes up the Integrity Commission in carrying out these specific functions, these special functions that are very necessary, and in particular, the fact that these departments have to work interdependent of each other.
Thank you. As has been said, the makeup of the Commission is effectively that there are three main units. There is public education, compliance, and the investigation unit. And they are supported by a number of support staff, which we couldn't function without. What we actually do is we carry out an assessment each year or every 2 years, and we look at what we see as the biggest threats and risks to the Turks and Caicos Islands. And from that assessment, which we'll look at the intelligence that we have, we'll look at what's out in the media as well, and we'll decide what we're going to concentrate on. And we call that a control strategy, but it doesn't matter. It's just a list of what are the biggest risks that we see. Now, I think most people will agree at the moment, one of the biggest risks is illegal immigration to the islands. We have a country near to us, Haiti, which is effectively dysfunctional at the moment. And with the recent surge in gun crime, etc., I think that's the area that we're currently concentrating on. But the units don't work in isolation. So investigation, if investigation are looking at one aspect of it, and I'll say that they're looking at immigration, let's say they're looking at immigration, that's not going to be dealt with in isolation by the investigation unit. Also, public education will focus their activities on that unit as well. And likewise compliance, they'll do greater due diligence on the declarants that come from those units. So I describe it as a three-legged stool, in that we all have to work together, because if one of those is working on something different, then the stool is likely to fall over. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for explaining the skill set that's necessary. It's also important for our listeners to know that each person within the Integrity Commission is sworn to an oath of secrecy, and confidentiality is taken very seriously, in particular within the compliance department in dealing with the declaration process.
Yeah, it's described in the intelligence world as having a corridor of air between the different units. So in other words, there is a barrier. Although we work together, it doesn't mean that we share everything. So there may be intelligence that's within the investigation unit, and that's not going to be shared with other aspects of the Integrity Commission, because there is no need to share it. People don't need to know. And likewise with compliance, we're particularly strict, I think is probably the word to use in relation to compliance, because we accept it's very personal information that people are giving to us. Now, as director, you may think that I would know what declarants have declared. No, I don't. I don't need to know that, because that's dealt with by the compliance side of things. Only if there was an issue in terms of that we were concerned that there may be criminal activity, then I would be informed of that. So if I cannot go into the compliance side of the databases and look at what's there, likewise investigation aren't allowed to do that either. We really do treat it very, very seriously. So if people are concerned that the information that they're giving to us is going to be shared, then it won't be shared. And in terms of it being shared out with the organisation, we'll all sign an oath of secrecy, as do the commissioners. So it's a criminal offence if we share any of that information, unless there is good reason to do so, and we don't. So it's really just to reassure people about the confidentiality.
I think it's also worth bearing in mind that the members of staff of the Commission and the commissioners themselves have to fill in the same declarations, and those are submitted to the Governor, who has overall purview of those. So it's not just the people in public life who have to go through the tedious task of filling in those declarations. It's all of those associated with the Integrity Commission as well.
Yes, thank you for the reassurance, Paul, that you would have shared, and also in highlighting again, because it was also mentioned during the compliance education session, that we too filed, but we filed to the Governor for transparency rather than filing to ourselves. And so, listeners, I hope that you're more reassured, in particular those who are in public life, who do file with the Integrity Commission.
I do know there's also a concern from the volumes of persons we have met with as to why there are not some other persons in the civil service who are not on the declarations list. And the simple reason is that we simply don't have the capability to go through 1,000 or 1,500 declarants. The 400 that we have takes a considerable amount of time. The director can later, expand on. We've narrowed down how we go about doing it, focusing on certain areas. However, it has been something that has come up over the 10 years I've been here, every single year, at almost every single session that we have, as to why more of these persons aren't declaring, why these persons aren't declaring. But when you look at the physical numbers, it's going to be about 1,500 to 2,000 persons. And the Commission simply couldn't do that. That's why the list of specified persons, if you look at the ordinance and the pamphlets that we always hand out, it's there. The titles of the positions that they hold in the TCIG, who are obligated to declare. And we understand your concerns. We do understand. We get it. But some things just cannot be done at present with what we have. So we make do with what we have right now.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add to that is I think it's quite logical the way we deal with it. As Richie has said, there's 400 declarants that we have. So we can't go into minute detail with all 400. But we're going to look at cabinet ministers, more than we would look at
High-risk
people
groups.
lower down. We're going to look at permanent secretaries more. We're going to look at the Premier more, because we need a reassurance that these people that their finances are in good shape.
Yes, thank you very much. And indeed, persons would have expressed that there should be other groups of persons who should be included. However, we always explain that we have to be strategic. We have limited resources, and we have to maximize the use of our skill set that we do have based on the risk. Commissioner Stephen, can you please elaborate on some of the goals of the Integrity Commission in carrying out its mandate? We are aware of the vision and the mission where it states that we would like a corruption-free nation, and of course persons would express if that is even possible. But looking into having persons who serve in public life who have integrity and commitment to serve the people, and the mission being that the Integrity Commission would lead in combating corruption, promoting integrity, and increasing legal compliance. And all of this is to ensure that public resources would be used fairly for the benefit of all TCI people.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong in being guided by an ultimate intention to have a corruption-free nation, but being realistic, that's unlikely anywhere in the world, sadly. And so, just to repeat what the primary mandate of the Integrity Commission is, it's to promote integrity, honesty, and good faith in public life. So can we first of all concentrate on the fact that our remit is for those in public life?
Yes.
And it's something that we may come on later as people seek to weaponize the Integrity Commission outside the field of public life. So one is looking at really educating those in public life with an ultimate aim to ensure that everyone does right without being told that they need to do right, or cajoling them into doing right by the fear of prosecution or internal disciplinary process. And in that respect, one of the principal goals since I've become a commissioner is to be taken more seriously, the commission to be taken more seriously by those who fail to comply with their statutory obligations, who might be engaging or thinking of engaging in acts of corruption, and giving them the message that there is a body of good governance that will deal with that behaviour, whilst at the same time seeking to educate the public at large and those in public life as to the scope of our powers, so that people actually understand the role of the Integrity Commission and don't think of it as some secondary police force or disciplinary body that is there to be threatened with if they do something wrong in their job. Those really are the principal goals as I see it, is to fulfill our mandate as best we can with the resources available, with the ultimate aim of promoting integrity, honesty and good faith in public life, whilst at the same time educating the public at large.
Yes, indeed. And one of the key things is that the public, they are part of the stakeholders. We are educating them so that they can work with us for the good of the public.
Well, ultimately, it's the public at large that suffer from corruption.
Indeed.
I'd just like to emphasise the point that Stephen has made, is that we are here to deal with corruption. And if you are corrupt, I would like you to be looking over your shoulder, because we will go for you. But we're not here to deal with people who make mistakes. We all make mistakes in our jobs. That's got nothing to do with us. We are not going to go after you. We have no powers in relation to that and have no desire to be involved in it. So don't worry about that. Worry if you're corrupt, but don't worry about anything else.
Indeed. The Integrity Commission is not here to make your work harder or more difficult. We're here to work with you for efficiency and effectiveness within the public sector. Thank you.
That's not an invitation to withhold information you are obliged to give as part of your declaration.
In fact, you are legally obliged to give. So if you know that there is corruption, it's not, I'll turn a blind eye. If you turn a blind eye, you're also committing an offence.
Right. And we've said that over and over throughout the meetings with the civil service and statutory bodies. Our ordinance is one of the few that actually says that you are obligated to do it. That is why we have the anonymous provision for you to report. So you don't have to walk into our office and give us your name, et cetera, et cetera. You can go to our website and you can give us any information that you want, and we'll take it from there.
Indeed, I want to reiterate the importance of reporting anonymously. The who, the what time, which island, which parties involved, in particular a government party, because our remit is the government. So ensure that you report and you report anonymously.
And when we say party, we mean individual, not politically wise, please.
Definitely
The
not.
individuals involved in what it is you're saying. If you can give us that anonymously, that's good.
And any supporting information that you would have to support the report that you're sending in. Ensure that goes a long way. So thank you very much, gentlemen, thus far. I am Imterniza McCartney. You're listening to the Commission's report, Integrity Matters, sponsored by FLO. My guests, Commissioner Stephen Wilson K.C., Director Paul Martin, Deputy Director Richard Bean. We will be right back after this break and a word from our sponsor.
As a man who loves spending time with family, does whatever it takes to keep my wife happy, and works hard to grow a successful business, it is important for me to stay on top of my game. With Flo's new family plans, I get to keep all my favorite things in one place. With 80 gigabytes of data to share with up to 4 family members and unlimited local anywhere talk and text, I get one bill that covers my entire family for as low as $60 per line and no surprise charges. All I had to do was add my home internet to my mobile, switch to Flow for more savings and more value. Flow helps me look out for my family's greatest needs, keep my customers happy, stay connected to everything I love, and have more time for the right things.
Welcome back to the Commission's report, Integrity Matters. I'm your host, Imterniza McCartney, the Public Education Officer for the Integrity Commission, and I'm here with Commissioner Stephen Wilson K.C., Director Paul Martin, and Deputy Director Richard Bean, respectively. Just so you're not left out of being a part of today's program, I ask you to visit our website at www.integritycommission.tc. If you have any questions, feel free to forward them to ask@integritycommission.tc. You can also call us on 941-7847, our Provo number, or 946-1941. So we started talking about the mandate of the Integrity Commission, the role and the function. We also talked about the resources, the skill set that we need, and assessing risks and how we work together as departments, as well as looking at our vision and our mission. Paul, can you kindly explain some of the challenges that exist in tackling corruption in small island states? We know that the Turks and Caicos has just over 40,000 people. We are closely linked either in family or social ties, and that creates a lot of cultural nuances in terms of the challenges in addressing corruption. Can you explain some of the challenges and maybe some recommendations or solutions, suggested solutions?
There are undoubtedly challenges. The TCIG is predominantly made up of belongers, and it's a small island, and a lot of people know each other. There is corruption here, undoubtedly, but quite often people say, oh, you're exaggerating the corruption here, or you're making us sound bad. But I just want to give you just a few figures just to show that the impact it has across the world. So last year, corruption cost 2.6 trillion across the world, 5% of the global GDP. There was over $1 trillion given in bribes. Investigative journalists have exposed it through the Pandora Papers, Paradise, Panama Papers. We've got enormous companies that are corrupt or have corruption within them. Credit Suisse, we've had the instance recently in BVI showing the corruption there. So TCI is no different from anywhere else. I'm from the UK. We have corruption in the UK, undoubtedly. There's a lot of money laundering in the UK, particularly in London. But as you said, there are issues with a small population, and particularly where it's a relatively small number of people who are in government. But when I talk about corruption, I normally say there are 5 things that we need in order to tackle corruption. And the first thing is an acceptance that there is corruption. When I first came here, I spoke to certain people in public life, and they said, no, we don't have corruption here. No, you're exaggerating it. We do have corruption here, but similar to many other countries. But once you've accepted there is corruption, the second thing that we need is a political will to deal with it. So we need the government to say, we are going to tackle corruption because it's unacceptable. And then the last 3 things that you need is you need an adequately funded anti-corruption agency. You need a prosecutorial authority that works. So we need the DPP's office to work, and we need the courts to work, the judicial system to work, because otherwise we can't tackle it. And there are still some challenges within those aspects of it. Our funding comes from the government, and it's voted in by the House of Assembly. Yet they're the very people that we have oversight of, which is problematic in relation to our independence. The Integrity Unit, one of the strong things about it is that we are independent. Only the Governor can direct that we investigate certain matters. No one else can. The Premier can't, the House of Assembly can't. So that independence is very important, but it's denuded if we actually have to go to those very bodies to ask for funding. So there's some of the issues that we have, but I don't want to be all negative about it, because there are a lot of positives here. There is a lot of corruption reported to it, and I would encourage people to carry on anonymously if they wish to report it. Even if we can't deal with it all, it gives us an intelligence picture, so we know where the big risks are. We've talked about the benefits of the compliance legislation, conflict of interest, the transparency, and the code of conduct. So there are positives, but there are also challenges. And as I say, particularly the challenges are that we have oversight of bodies who actually control our budget.
Yeah, so funding and challenges with the political will and acceptance of that corruption actually exists here within the Turks and Caicos.
I think there's also a challenge that Paul hasn't touched on, and that's, I wouldn't say it's specific to Turks and Caicos, but in a nation where foreign workers require work permits, and an awful lot of those brought in to assist with investigations are overseas workers, the need to apply to an arm of government that could theoretically, and indeed probably is, the subject of investigations, namely the Immigration Department, having to ask Immigration Department to grant work permits for the very people who are investigating in itself compromises the Integrity Commission's ability to work. And certainly since I've been on the Commission, this has been a repeated concern. And it's, whereas oddly enough, it wasn't an issue in the past.
I think one of the very important aspect, the director spoke a bit on it earlier, is that this country, this overseas territory, is the population composition is largely of persons from our neighboring countries, where anyone who has visited knows payments for services under the table is the norm. All the conversations we have had with persons from our neighbors have said, listen, this is the norm where I come from, so I do not have a problem in paying it. Therein lies a very significant point. When you have individuals who do not have a problem in paying the money, the persons in our system should therefore say no. Thank you, but no. However, that is not happening. And we know that's not happening, and that has never been happening. We simply accept it. And in many instances, most instances now, it's demanded up front. So you not only have persons in the service saying, give me this, you have persons who are very willing and very capable and able of paying the monies over. And that poses a significant problem when you talk about the challenges we face. It's trying to convince a culture of various cultures that, no, you do not do that. That is not to be done. We have spoken to persons, we have spoken to reverends from churches who said people have left their churches because they refuse to take their money and go and do certain things through the government system. And they say, you're not a good reverend. You're not helping me. You're supposed to help me. Here's the money. This is who you need to pay. Do it. So when you have that aspect of it coming into play, it makes things even that more difficult in actually dealing with the situation.
So there are numerous challenges at varying levels that would need to be tackled for us to improve the situation here in the Turks and Caicos, and even in the Integrity Commission, and leading and combating corruption within the Turks and Caicos.
I'd also like to add, though, I mean, we've got to be fair about this. The House of Assembly or Cabinet last year were generous in the monies that they gave to us. So I thank them for that. But we need a continuity of that. We need to know where we're going to be next year and the following year so that we can work to a budget.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing and highlighting some of the challenges that exist with tackling corruption within small island states. And just to move on a little bit before we go back to there, in terms of the commission, persons have asked over and over again, we are being watched by the Integrity Commission. But who is watching the watchdogs? Who is watching the Integrity Commission? So who does the Integrity Commission report to?
Well, I think you need to break that down a little bit more. Because first of all, there is, as Paul has referred to, the invaluable Commission support staff. They ultimately report to the Commission. And just for those who don't know, the Commission is 6 persons. Where they come from and where they are in life, as in a judge, a lawyer, an accountant, a member of the clergy, etc. Those are laid out by statute in the Integrity Commission ordinance. So the Commission is a body of 6 people that meets every 6 or so weeks. The support staff ultimately report to those, but on a day-to-day basis, they report to the director, who is supported by the deputy director. And at the Commission meetings, the director, the deputy director, the senior investigations officer, and the senior compliance officer, as well as yourself, give a report, which assists the commissioners in knowing what's going on without them having to micromanage the daily activities of the Commission. So that's part one, who do the staff report to. Secondly, in terms of who do the commissioners report to, well, we can approach this from 2 ways. If we wanted to look at it from a purely legalistic point of view, Section 14, subsection 2 of the ordinance effectively says that the commissioners are not subject to the direction of any person as they go about their activity, which is effectively to say it is an independent body. But, as I've mentioned before, every member of staff and every commissioner must submit a declaration, and that's subject to the purview of the governor, and if there are any issues that the governor feels in relation to the amount of information that's included, the governor can set up an inquiry and demand further information from the commissioners or the commission staff. The commission is required to submit an annual report to the House of Assembly, and it's required to submit a report to the House of Assembly after each election, dealing with its responsibilities in terms of campaign financing, etc. And all of those reports are published and available for inspection. And the Register of Interests of House of Assembly members, which is one of the obligations that they have to comply with, is likewise a public document.
Indeed. So persons are privy to visit the Integrity Commission's office and review the register of interest, the report. The report is also submitted to the House of Assembly members as well, and there is constant or continuous dialogue with the staff, with the commissioners, and also with representatives of the Integrity Commission to the governor.
And in terms of what you've said, the perception of who's watching the watchers, one should also understand what the extent of the Commission's powers are. The director and the deputy director don't actually have any powers at all. I mean, they are the day-to-day managers on the ground, but they can't choose who to prosecute. They can't choose who to investigate or under the Civil Service Code of Conduct, etc. And the Commission itself doesn't have powers to fire people or to prosecute people. Its ultimate power is simply to make a recommendation.
But I think if I can just reassure people that we are held to account. At the beginning of each year or 2 years, I will set out what the objectives of the Commission's going to be, and that will be agreed with the Commissioners. And I will be held to account for that. And likewise, I will hold the Commission staff to account. We have a structure we have a meeting structure where people have to report their activity on a monthly basis, and then that will subsequently, they will report to the Commissioners as well. And it's right that we should do that, because if it doesn't get measured, it doesn't get done. So we are held to account. Sometimes we have disagreements with the Commissioners, but that's right as well, because there should be scrutiny of what we do.
Yes, there has to be healthy discussion. There has to be disagreement. That's the way you grow. Everyone just can't see eye to eye all the time. That's not going to happen, and it doesn't happen in the Commission. But everyone in the Commission is professional. We go about it, and it's constantly a growth experience with the expatriate staff we bring in, with the specialists we bring in, with those who are here. It's a day-to-day, week-to-week growing experience in trying to give Turks and Caicos Islanders this type of commission they deserve.
Yeah, so thank you very much, gentlemen. And just to move forward, during the sessions throughout the years, we've done over 1,000, 1,500 declarants in the past, as well as persons throughout the public service. And this continuous complaint that, hey, there's this fear of the Integrity Commission that sometimes the Integrity Commission is used as a whipping stick to threaten persons that, and it impacts on their productivity and them being innovative. And even they're sometimes afraid to make important decisions because they feel like if they make a mistake, that the Integrity Commission will just roll up on them. That's how they would have expressed it. What do we say to such persons? And I know Stephen has already started to address it in some way, but just to clearly.
I think it goes back again to the need to understand what the role of the Commission is. We don't. I mean, I've had it in my practice as a lawyer in the private sector. I've had people saying to me that they're going to report somebody to the Integrity Commission, and that person has nothing to do with public life, and it's just somebody that they're in a dispute with. Well, we are not arbiters of private disputes. We deal solely with those persons in public life, and we are restricted to investigating their failure to comply with their obligations and engaging in acts of corruption. So if the Integrity Commission is being weaponized against you and you're being threatened, it's certainly worth first knowing what the Integrity Commission can do and can't do. And we can't discipline you. We can't fire you. At best, if you have been guilty of an act that falls within our purview, we can make a recommendation. So, I mean, it all comes down ultimately to education, both in respect of those who are on the receiving end of such threat and in respect of those making such threats.
Of course. And I just want to throw it out there that I'm available to do public education with whichever department and whichever island. Just make the request. You can do it online, or you can feel free to call the office or even send an email. I am available because it's better for you to be informed, to ask the necessary questions, so that moving forward, you would really truly understand the role and the function of the Integrity Commission. And even if someone was to threaten you with it, you would know your rights.
And I must also say that, given what Commissioner Wilson has said, in the sessions that we've had, when persons are appraised of those facts, their response is, but you should have that power. And our response has always been, we don't think you really know what you're asking for. As it stands now, the system can work, but it comes back to what the director spoke of earlier. There has to be that total buy-in to what the commission has to do. So there's no need really for the commission to have that sort of power. There's no need to have 1,500 declarants on the list. It's doing what we do with the numbers we have properly, and having the cooperative effort of other divisions when we do turn to them and say, we would like this recommendation carried out, for it to be done.
Yeah, and I'd just re-emphasise, poor performance, nothing to do with us at all. You do not need to worry about what you do in your job, but do worry if you're corrupt, because then we will go for you.
Indeed, and we would have mentioned that we work with the TCIG. They are our important key stakeholders as well, and as well as the institutions of good governance in supporting and working towards combating corruption. We are the leaders, but we are to work together with all these other institutions in order to maximize the functions that we carry out, that we are mandated to carry out. How do you see this working in terms of the past 10, 12 years we've been in existence, going on to 13, and working with our stakeholders? What has been good? What are the gaps? How can we improve in moving forward?
Well, I think Director Martin touched on this earlier in what he has said. The first and foremost thing that pops to my mind, and I think the Director's mind, is we turn to TCIG for financing. Anti-corruption bodies must be adequately funded. That has been a mantra of ours from day one. The very first set of commissioners, remember, when the commission was formed, there were only 4 people. It effectively took the commission, 4 people working in the commission along with the commissioners, and it took the commissioners saying, look, we're not going to continue this if we're not properly funded, before additional monies came and more staff came in 2014. So financing is always, always number one and very important. TCIG has been very good with us. They have been very good with us. They have provided us funding that they haven't provided to other departments, because we do believe they do see the need for us to do what it is we're doing. However, as we constantly say to them, to fully understand what we do, to understand the man's walk, you need to put your feet in his shoes. More is necessary, because what we are looking into, it's not child's play and it's not small. It costs a fortune, and it is here. It goes to the director saying there has to be that acceptance that it is here, and it has to be dealt with for the Turks and Caicos' continued good growth and development. So with TCIG, financing is really one of the major aspects that we require. Training, we say thank you. You have the AG's Chambers and FSC, they put on training programs throughout the year. Our staff get the invitations, we can go to training. And that is very good. And I think that the training programs in government are second to none in the Western Hemisphere. They do an exceptional job at training persons. One of the other aspects I think the director is going to expand upon is legislation. Yes, we turn to the AG's Chambers. There's legislation that the Commission may need to simply be touched upon for us to be more effective in what it is we're doing. And timeliness of such legislation coming into play, the willingness and the timeliness of it is most important in being able to tackle the aspects that we have to tackle and are mandated to tackle. I'll leave it for Director Martin to go even further.
I mean, there's been some positive steps in relation to our ordinance. I mean, there are problems with all ordinances, but it is good ordinance, and we have some excellent powers in relation to it. And those powers have been increased this year, thanks to the AG Chambers and the House of Assembly and Cabinet in relation to that, which is positive. But there are still aspects where we need further powers. Most of our work deals with, or a large proportion of it deals with money laundering, but we're not a nominated body within the Proceeds of Crime Ordinance, which is difficult for us because it means we have to go to other bodies. But again, there are positive sides in relation to this. I've got a meeting next week with the Financial Services Commission because we've had some problems with a bank, and we'll work through that. We work hand in hand now with the Deputy Governor in relation to issues that there are within TCIG, because it's not always the correct thing to go and to prosecute people. There may be better ways of dealing with it, and we can make recommendations, as Deputy has said earlier, in relation to, well, perhaps this would be more appropriate if discipline procedures were taking place. And that has happened on several occasions, and I think it's been the appropriate and best way of dealing with it. So yes, there are challenges for us, but I like to think in the last couple of years that we've moved forward and we're working more collaboratively with the government in finding out how to iron out corruption. How can we manage it out? How can we lessen the opportunities that there are? Because prevention is better than prosecution. Thanks.
Yes, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And so, gentlemen, just before we leave, I'll ask for you. I know Paul already going to reiterate, going to start it on that thought pattern, the way forward. What are your comments and final comments in moving forward? How do we move forward? Richard?
The Commission has been here for 12 years now. We've grown from strength to strength. We've had setbacks. We've had good things happen. We learn from the setbacks. Every setback is a learning experience. So when we come here to talk now, it's not speaking having not been in the midst of what has been going on. I think we have a very good idea of what we need to do and where we need to go. Our public education, we would like to ramp that up even more, because it's clear that even though we've been doing it for 10 years, you will always find those who will find a way to say the negative thing that spreads very quickly, very quickly. And I've always endorsed our people, please read. I can't make you do it. There's an ordinance. Pick it up and read it. You will see what we can do and what we can't do. You would understand if people tell you things to question them. Read and question. Always do that. And we look forward to you doing that, because it's through education, particularly with our younger people. It's very difficult to break traditions and customs in older folk. So we're going to focus on our younger folk to try to instill in them what I think our fathers and forefathers instilled in most of us, that we must do what is right without having to be forced to do it. Nobody wants to be spanked. And we will take that into the primary schools and the younger levels, because we haven't been able to do it in the past. When we were ready to do it, COVID came. So we're now in a position where we're going to go back into the schools to get the younger persons carrying it home, because we do know they took home the PSAs we put on the air over the years. So we'll work on that, because it is something that has to start from the grassroots coming up.
Indeed, wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it. Right is right, even if no one is doing it. Paul?
Thank you. I think it's quite easy sometimes to think, oh, it's very difficult what we do and we're not making progress. But the good thing about writing reports in relation to it actually makes you realise the progress that we have made in recent years, and we are moving forward. And as I said, we've had substantial support from the government in relation to it in terms of finance, from AG's chambers, so we are moving forward. One of the strange things that I find about TCI is that there does appear to be that acceptance of corruption. Oh, it's normal and that's what happens. And one of the things that I would like people to reflect on is that it is your money that is being stolen. It is not some cloud of money up in the sky. It's the population's money that is being stolen. So again, I would just say you're under an obligation to, if you're part of the government, to report to us. You can do it anonymously. But the public in general, if you go into a government body and they ask for you to pay them additional money in relation to any service, then tell us about it and we will attempt to address that. We cannot work alone. We need to work with you, the public, and we need to work with government bodies. And it was interesting. Again, I was at a meeting last week. There's a new permanent secretary, and she said, yes, we have some problems. And it's that recognition that there are problems, and then we can work together, because we can't work in isolation. There has to be a collaborative approach. Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks to those who have been assisting us within the government sector. Thank you. Thank you very much. We need more of your help. And just so that the public knows, they have a citizen duty, an ethical right to report if they're being coerced, to pay a bribe, to facilitate a service. You have a duty to report as well. And those who work within the government sector, you have a legal duty to report corruption, and you can do it anonymously. Commissioner Stephen.
I would say that our vision has to be better understood, to be given the resources, both financial and manpower, to be able to carry out our functions more efficiently, more cost effectively, and with greater results. But if you think about it, if we were to achieve our ultimate aim, we wouldn't be needed anymore.
Exactly.
So if we could get everyone doing right without being told to do right, and nobody was doing wrong, there would be no need for an integrity commission.
Indeed,
But until that day comes, do right, and if you know that somebody's doing wrong, report it.
Yes, do right, and if you know someone is doing wrong, report it. Listeners, thanks to our gentleman who's been sharing all the information on the Integrity Commission with us, Commissioner Stephen Wilson K.C., Director Paul Martin, Deputy Director Mr. Richard Bean. Thanks also to Flo and Radio Turks and Caicos. Thank you for joining us today on the Commission's report, Integrity Matters. If you want to learn more, please do visit our website at www.integritycommission.tc and feel free to call us. In the words of Tom Henson, creating a culture of integrity and accountability not only improves effectiveness, it also generates a respectable, enjoyable, and life-giving setting in which to work. And I will add, to live, to play, and to grow. We all want the best Turks and Caicos, where we live, we play, we grow. We can make it better if we work together. This has been the Commission's report, Integrity Matters. I am your host, Imterniza McCartney, the Public Education Officer for the Integrity Commission, and I'm asking you to join me next week, Thursday at 2 p.m. when we will flow in the afternoon here on Radio Turks and Caicos.
Elevate your experience with Flow's fiber-fast internet and mobile combined. Enjoy double data and unlimited talk on 4 mobile lines. Plus up to 75 megabits per second home internet speed at the best rate, giving you the best value to stay connected. Hon, I think our Flow Mobile is elevated.
You think?
An elevated experience starts with Flow at home, powering double data and unlimited talk on 4 mobile lines at the best rate. Visit a Flow store to sign up today.